the case started, no one knew this video. Until we came to this court, the footage was not known. It was not part of any news at the funeral or during the funeral. I'm not sure if the humiliation of Mr. Venter has to do with multiple audiences. It was not us who laid the charge. It was not us who... We saw the video in the media, but that's way after the funeral. So you are very wrong. He was not humiliated. This video didn't happen in front of the world, as you suppose. You're saying in front of an international community. No, that is actually wrong.
Okay.
That's factually incorrect.
So let's say everybody knows the video footage now. You are saying you were humiliated. What about Venter being humiliated in front of all these officers, all these strangers that were there that saw it? What about his humiliation on this specific day in front of military, army? What about his humiliation?
Mr. Venter represents the state. He's not acting on his behalf. He's representing an institution that must oversee that the funeral goes without an incident. He shouldn't cause the incidents. He should make sure that the mourners have a correct platform, an amicable platform to mourn a loss in their lives. He's engaging mourners. He comes because he's got that power at that instance. He's a powerful man in relation to this particular instance. The power relations are on his side. He's wearing uniform. He's got the power to stop who comes in and comes out. And even when he's demonstrated to, yes, I mean, we came here maybe 2 years after. It still didn't occur to him. He still didn't care whether we had the right to be there or not. That's an institution. That's a person representing the institution that must protect the rights of the mourners, seeing that the instance or the incident or the occasion was a funeral. No, Mr. Venter is the institution in this case. So Mr. Venter is exercising power in this instance. The fact of our successful resistance of that power is the coincidence of our successful resistance of that power would not result into any form of his powerlessness.
You know,
He's powerful. He's the police officer.
Yes, he has, as said, he was in charge of the gate, access control.
He's not mourning.
He has a duty.
Exactly, to guide, to protect the law, to make sure that the mourners mourn in peace. And he interfered with those rights. He violated the law. We know today that we had the right to be there. He may have not known at that instance, but he knows subsequently. You know subsequently. The whole country knows subsequently that we had the right to mourn. We had the right to be there. Mr. Venter interfered with that right. Mr. Venter violated that right. And then laid a charge. Videos were released subsequently, not really for Mr. Venter, for our humiliation.
Then
we are the ones who are answering.
Then at this point, while it seems accused number one's back is now moving to the vehicle, you are still engaging with some officers. Why at that point?
That's not humiliation. He's being corrected.
Listen, that's my question. Why at that point did you not just walk in?
We did.
Leave the vehicle.
We
walk,
did.
Not drive in, walk in.
We had the right to be in with our vehicle. Those are the rights Venter had to protect. Otherwise, we shouldn't have been subjected to an entire procedure over days, over hours, of being cleared. We had the right. It's immaterial. Venter is on the wrong. And we know now as a fact.
You are saying Venter is on the wrong.
Absolutely.
But never once, when you saw, according to your version, I'm not saying Venter is wrong, but according to what you're testifying, Venter is wrong. Not once did you, or accused one, say, we will now speak to a senior. He is in the wrong. Let's follow some procedure. Let's speak to a senior. Let's go there. There's military. there's army, there's somebody there you could have spoken to. But both of you decided, let's assault Colonel Venter. And afterwards, you wanted to speak to whoever is going to listen to you or accused number 1.
Mr. Venter's language was physical, was forceful. We are mourning, we are mourners, we have all the rights. We talked to him. Mr. Venter responded physically.
And you and accused,
We had to fight.
you
We
responded
We
physically.
had at that moment to fight for our right to mourn.
And if
The
I
funeral and the program are on a time. There's a time. We have to go in, we have to participate in what should allow us a healing for the loss that we had just experienced. We engaged now we know a very well experienced police officer who responded physically. Now we know.
And your response.
So I'm saying to you, he responded physically. He was not a reasonable man. He was not. His response was to immediately be physical with our car.
with the car. Not you, not accused number 1. With the car, according to your version.
Yes.
He's physical with the car.
Yeah, he went to block our car.
Okay. Accused number 1, when he testified, I want to know if you stand with accused number 1, what he said. He said something, I was not going to reason with anyone who is going to stop me from burying my mother. He testified that. Do you feel the same way?
I think it's legitimate. I think it's a legitimate feeling that any reasonable human being should understand. The statement must be understood in the context.
But my question is, are you standing the same?
I'm answering your question.
Or you agreeing with him?
I'm answering.
Okay, answer.
That the statement must be understood. I'm saying that, first of all, it makes perfect sense to anybody who will reasonably apply their mind. The context is a very large one. We're in a funeral completely controlled by the state, subjected to multiple checkpoints by men and women of uniform, some carrying guns. Our cars are swept, we're made to wear tags on our heads, on our necks. We comply up until that point. At that point, we think there must be some mistake if Mr. Venter could be spoken to. He is spoken to by the driver, he's spoken to by the president. His response is physical. He goes and physically blocks our car while saying you're not allowed to enter.
Okay.
So for a person who acts in that manner, it should be qualified as unreasonable.
So unreasonable.
Mr. Venter was 100% cerebral. He was unreasonable.
You said something very interesting. There's maybe some mistake on Venter's part. There's maybe some mistake, you just said. And if there was some mistake, if, for example, he did not get the message properly from his superiors or his seniors, if there was some mistake, this whole incident, the funeral of late Winnie Mandela, this whole assault, this could have been avoided, sir, if both of you spoke to a senior at that time.
Mr. Venter, and I repeat, I don't even know if you know the senior. I don't know. I mean, the inference of speaking with some senior person whilst you're being engaged physically is not a very good expectation on the state's part. Here is our experience. We are in a funeral, completely guarded, controlled, directed by the state with its full might. Men and women take off uniform with guns, take us through multiple checkpoints with dogs. We've been engaging these men and women of uniform from very early in the morning. We don't expect an unreasonability from a police officer unless they are part of Buremag.
But you know, there's always Colonel Venter is in charge of the gate. There should, and there's always, with police officers, with the ranks, there's always a senior. There's always someone you can talk to if you are unsatisfied with any police officer's behavior.
I don't agree that that's always the case. I don't agree. I'm saying that this is a funeral. This is not, we're trying to enter a university. We're not, or trying to enter some party. We're trying to enter a funeral, which is on a time. We're trying to mourn. The state of our emotions is a very important one. The state should know us. Because our tags had our faces. The state should know us by name and surname, should know our faces. The state should know that we are coming. Hence the checkpoints and the sweepings and the credentials, which we complied with throughout. The unreasonable behavior of Mr. Venter seemed to us to be a direct violation of our rights. And in this case, it's the dignity to mourn.
If you had just asked both of you, where is your senior? Possibly General Zulu was there. At that time, we don't know where she is, but there is a senior. General Zulu was there. Maybe she would have come to speak to you before the assault.
If
this would have been avoided.
If General Zulu was the senior, General Zulu let us in. From what I understand, General Zulu is one of the ladies in blue uniform. If that's General Zulu, everybody except Venter kept saying, comrades, guys go in, guys go in. Just get in your car and get in. Get in your car and get in. If General Zulu is the senior of Mr. Venter, then they did let us in, and they were completely, in the manner of their communication with us, Your Worship, they were completely sympathetic. Completely sympathetic.
I understand. General Zulu did not let you in.
They were even saying, come down, I understand. Go to your car, come down. Just, he's assuring us that Venter is not going to do the back and forth he had been doing with trying to stop us from entry.
I can argue the different point. The people were saying, go to your car. They didn't want this assault. They could have meant, I don't want this assault. I don't want this humiliation on the field of late Winnie Mandela.
That would be very...
Is this a question or argument? Because it's not making any sense with respect.
Your Worship, the witness has said this is what they were understanding. These witnesses were never called. There's another possibility of what these...
Court will allow it.
Thank you, Your
You may
Worship.
proceed. If you want the question to be repeated, or are you able to answer?
maybe she must repeat it.
Repeat the question.
You said these officers were saying, calm down, calm down. They were sympathetic to you and accused one. They were saying, go to your car. Am I right? That's what you said. You were shaking your head. Just say, that's what you meant.
I'm
just
waiting for the
repeating.
question,
No,
Mama.
that is what you said. I'm just repeating what you said. Am I right to understand you correctly?
Yes, now
Okay.
that's a question.
Okay. Now, what I'm saying is, they could have meant, go to the car. Yes, we understand there's an incident, but just go to the car, go to the car. We don't want this assault. There's a possibility they meant that. We don't want this assault, this humiliation on the funeral of late Winnie Mandela.
They did not want our humiliation, and I would want to believe that being officers of the law, they appreciate that that car could have not gotten there without it being safe, without it having the rights to be there. It is with individuals that are wearing tags. They have the rights to be there. The sympathy is certainly on our part. Otherwise, the state's entire protocol was futile. If, at that instance, any car can be let in just because Venter is being pushed. Now, I'm saying to you, you will always misunderstand this entire event if you disarticulate it from its context. This is the state. This is the state. This is the full force of the government.
If you're saying the state, are you meaning
The police? Yeah, men, the police, men who are
Just
sworn
the
in, men and women who are sworn in to protect the law.
I'm just following, you're just meaning the SAPS, police.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the
Continue.
state. The state has been in charge. And its charge doesn't start at the gate, Your Worship. So any officer who is competent knows that this car could have not arrived here unless it had all the full rights. And if there was a dispute, they couldn't take the side of the pushers, unless they were sure that the pushers, in this case, myself and the accused one, had the right to be there. Because it would be a risk. The entire protocol is meant to avoid risks, some of which include bombs, include urgent provocateurs entering to disrupt the funeral procession. They must have been thinking in full light of that entire procedure that they were allowing us to enter.
Exactly. So there should have been a senior on duty. It is the state, as you just said.
Having a senior
As, no, let me finish. Let me finish. Thank you. As you just said, SAPS, the full force of the police, they are in charge. There is, if you are unsatisfied, if you have just asked, I believe if you have just asked, can I speak to your senior, your supervisor, somebody would have come. Because SAPS, as you said, is in charge.
The idea that Mr. Fente, who had been engaged, was going to give us a senior. Our reading of Mr. Fente, based on his dismissal of us conversationally and his physical language, is that he was not a man who was going to answer any questions. He's not a man who was going to say, no, let me call my senior to us. Certainly he didn't say that. He didn't even say that he's going to verify. He told us we're not allowed to enter. So the idea of any reasonable person in that context, with a mountain of offender acting in that manner, physically, to think he's, again, the person who's going to give me a senior, who's going to not think he's in charge, who's not going to think he has the power to stop the car, who's not going to think I am not allowed, that's a very unreasonable expectation. We tried to engage Mr. Fente. That attempt might have led, to that possibility. He was not engageable. Mr. Fente told us we are not allowed to enter, went to physically block the car, refused to be removed in a pull position, which he responded with a push, and then we kept pushing him, he kept pushing us back to try and stop us from entering. That's the context. That's the manner of a man we were confronted with. He was not a reasonable person. He was not a person who was going to give me his senior.
But you didn't ask. Am I right?
Because-
But you did not ask.
Because Mr. Fenter was not engageable, did not have the opportunity for a decent conversation to take place at the point at which I was engaging. He was physical.
He was physical.
Yes.
And physical, not laying his hands on you, but physical just with his body.
You need to respond, sir?
Yes.
Alternative,
Your
if
Worship,
there's no answer.
I'm hoping that the court will appreciate that that has the same effect. To say that he didn't use his hand to push and he used his body, it has the same effect. It is a push. Push is a description of force effect. So Mr. Fender pushed back many times to try and block us from entering. He did. You saw it in the video that they played. So to say that he didn't use his hand to try and invalidate or make futile the fact that he was physical, I think that it's seriously immaterial. At least as long as my answer is put in that context.
I'm going to ask you a last question. Did you feel your life was in danger? Your life, besides your dignity,
yes,
your life.
my life was in danger.
How was your life in danger?
Because my dignity is my life.
Is your dignity your life?
Yes.
And everything could have been avoided.
If Fenter respected the law.
And if you just said, I'm speaking to a senior.
No.
It would not. Okay.
No. I completely disagree and I wish to explain again.
Okay.
Fenter was not a man. You know when a person you're speaking to.
Sorry, you
that
said
they will be
Fenter is not a man.
was not a man who was going to be answering questions. He was physical and unreasonable. He did not give us a chance to reason with him. And certainly in his behavior, he didn't seem like a man who was going to even take kind asking for an authority other than him.
I will still put it to you, you've never asked. Your Worship, That is my end of my questioning, Your Worship. Please.
Mr. Otis, re-examination.
Dr. Ndlozi, I want to start on this video and then we're going to move backwards. In this video, how many people do you see restraining Colonel Venter?
At least 2.
How many, maybe you should step closer, how many females do you see with blue caps in front of him?
Yeah, I should look.
Yes, you may.
But he needs to respond to the microphone.
Just come around the side to this microphone.
Which side? It's 3 caps, 3 blue caps.
And what are the people that are underneath those 3 blue caps doing?
They are restraining Mr. Venter.
Thank you. Now I'm going to take you back, sir. But before, if you can go back, you stay here for the video, then we can do the video. It's even better. If I may, Your Worship, thank you. Thank you. Can we go all the way to the beginning, please? Now, yeah, starting there. Thank you. You see cars coming in. Do you see any blue lights or credentials, sir?
No, not on these cars.
Any sign saying this belongs to the convoy?
No, no sign.
Oh.
No visible sign.
Going with this.
Now I'm going to show you, Worship, now.
Examination.
Yes, Your Worship, I'm going to show you exactly.
Cross-examine him.
No. It comes to, I'll move forward on this. If you watch the video, and then I'll ask the question. Those vehicles have gone in, and now is at the point where my learned friend started the video, you'll see, where the BMW X5s arrive. There we go. So this is where the video started under cross-examination, do you remember?
Yes.
Right. Now, I want to ask you, after these vehicles move forward, to look at the video that was shown to you. You'll see it. Well, what's it in real time? I want to go to the point, Mr. Baba, where the police officer's got a hand up where Dr. Ndlozi was asked about the hand. No, it's coming now. About the hand pointing to in his direction. I'll see it now. No. You're going to see Colonel Venter's boot come into the picture, and then the frick car, as you termed it. Once those BMWs move now, it's within the next minute. First umbrella. glimpse of movement.
Just
at
one
the
moment,
bottom.
Mr. Baba, just paused. Mr. Otis, Mr. Malema wants your attention.
I beg your pardon, thank you. Now, if you focus at the bottom now, you'll see we just see a white image, which you'll see becomes part of the fracas. The video only starts from this point. Was there anything going on to the left of the video now?
Yes, there was. That's where the pushing to and fro with Mr. Fender was taking place.
Right. Now, watch carefully from here, please. Please. There we go. I need to tell you when to stop. Stop. No, sorry, you're not in the video yet. I'll listen to my learned friend. Stop. No, the hand's not up. It's not, it's actually, no, you jumped. You're going to get fired. Right, stop. At this stage, and why I want to go back, can you tell the court what the distance between the lady with her hand up and you is?
At least 2 feet. My feet, not Fender's.
Right, now, before we move on, you've said that Fenter's a mountain of a man, you're in the background here, but we've now seen Fenter in court and we've seen you in court. How would you describe the difference in size between the two of you?
He can finish me in a fight.
Sorry, but the question was not asked with regards to size.
Worship, he mentioned size throughout cross-examination. He did. Mountain of a man, physical, it was we mentioned same time. That's a relative concept.
I will allow Mr. Otis.
Thank
You may
you.
proceed.
Right, now, those 3 police ladies that you identify will go forward never testified, so we don't know what their version is for the state. What do you perceive them to be doing in relation to either you or Colonel Fenter? And we'll watch through to the end now till we get to where we were that we began. Please proceed, Mr. Baba. Watch the 3 ladies. What's your perception of their conduct there?
They restrained Mr. Fender to the wall, kept him at the wall with
And-
their back against him.
Stop. And in this whole process, what has happened with the position of the motor vehicle that you and accused number 1 were in?
It is now entering the cemetery.
So, with all of these police officers and dignitary or police officers, what has happened with the vehicle in the video?
Nothing, it has entered.
Now I want to show you where my learner friend showed you the hearse coming in. If we can move. For the record, there's a gap in time. Your vehicle's proceeded through, and the next vehicle that was put to you by my learner friend will be the hearse. It also looks like a Mercedes. You'll see it now. There we go. Now, Dr. Ndlozi, can there be any doubt whether that vehicle is part of the convoy or not?
There can be no doubt because it has the coffin casket.
Now, I'll finish the video, thank you. Yeah. The hearse carrying the coffin of Winnie Madikizela Mandela. In your mind, sir, and even going back, it's 4 years, not 2 years, as you said earlier, but we know as a fact, 2018 and 2022. Can there be any doubt about the hearse being part of the convoy or not?
There can be no doubt. It was
And on the video, which vehicle came through the gate first? The hearse or the vehicle carrying you and accused number one?
The vehicle carrying me and accused number one.
Thank you. Now, in this situation, where it was put to you that Colonel Venter was humiliated, did you ever intend to humiliate Colonel Venter?
No.
What was your intention there at the time?
It had to do with my desire to enter and mourn and participate in the mourning ceremony.
Remaining with the issue of humiliation, you've told the court that you were there as the official spokesperson of the Economic Freedom Fighters. You were accompanied by the president of the Economic Freedom Fighters. You had credentials. Did any of you know who Colonel Venter was
No,
prior to this incident?
we didn't know him at all.
So in a situation like this, where you have dignitaries going to attend a funeral of a close person who's internationally acclaimed, who could possibly suffer humiliation?
Certainly ourselves were members of parliament voted by millions of our people. We command a huge amount of respect in our communities.
Now, I want to go to a very simple thing. It was put to you 4, 5, I think maybe I counted 7 times. Were you aware that there was an officer who was superior to Venter at the gates at the time?
No, not at the time. I could have been. Mr. Venter was not a very conversational person.
So, were you in a position to say, Mr. Colonel Venter, hang on, I want to speak to your senior officer to establish exactly what rights I have here? Were you in a position? Was there any indication? Did it say anything that speak to somebody superior to me? Was there any indication anywhere that there was somebody else that you could seek some relief from?
Not at all. At the time, certainly, when I started engaging him, he was already in the act of denying us access physically.
And did any of those officers there say, hang on, I'm going to call somebody superior who can manage the situation?
They asked us to enter. If anything, those officers that were with Venter said to us was, please enter.
Now, we've seen the program, I'll refer to it officially as Exhibit A. There were times when things were meant to happen in this matter. Were you in a position to tell anybody at the gate to stop the proceedings, not proceed with the funeral, so you could seek some relief from a superior officer who may or may not have been there?
This was an event of the state. The state had been in charge from the word go through its multiple forms of officers. The state is stopping us from entering. The state may as well proceed without us, and we lose the opportunity to mourn.
Did anybody present that day say, stop it, you're humiliating Colonel Venter?
No, not even him.
Did the issue of humiliation on the other side, I'm saying from any of the people in uniform, ever come to the fore on that day?
No.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, sir. You're excused.
That is the defense case.
Ms. Hart?
Your Worship, that's the defense case, Your Worship. We will then postpone. We haven't discussed anything, Your Worship, because it was load shedding. We were just rushing in just to start before load shedding.
Is the parties going to submit heads of arguments again for purposes of judgment, or how does the parties want to deal with the issue?
Your Worship, I am in a position to argue the matter. Out of fairness to my learned friend, we didn't discuss this. I'm not going to take advantage of anything. We anticipated, all of us, as Your Worship, to load shedding at 10 o'clock this morning. My problem is finding future dates, but I would be in a position to argue the matter. If my learned friend wants to postpone to file heads of argument, I don't mind that either. If she's dominant, let her decide the way forward, and we'll comply accordingly. Obviously, Your Worship, guided by Your Worship. I don't know if Your Worship wants heads of argument, if Your Worship doesn't want heads of argument. So it was always anticipated, out of fairness to my learned friend, Your Worship, that we wouldn't get past 10 o'clock this morning. That's why even Your Worship knows, Your Worship rushed into court at 9 o'clock. I rushed to the extent that I could through my examination in chief, and my learned friend also did for re-examination, and through her cross-examination. I saw her watching her watch, as was I, Your Worship, because we did, unfortunately, by virtue of the way we live in this country, anticipate load shedding. So we're now in uncharted territory, so she can decide the way forward. I can argue now, or I can file heads of argument guided by Your Worship's desires and my learned friend's intentions.
Thank you, Mr. Otis.
Your Worship, we can postpone, Your Worship, for heads of argument. Your Worship, I also do not want to start in the middle of argument, Your Worship, and then it's load shedding. So we can then postpone. I'm in the hands with regards to dates, Your Worship. With regards to arguments, I am also handing back the exhibit, Your Worship.
Yes, thank you. In this regard, Mr. Otis, we will deal with it as follows, as we have dealt with the application for 174. So the court will then only grant one more postponement for the matter, and then the court will prepare judgment on the next occasion. So heads of arguments by the parties is to be received prior to the next date.
Your Worship, may we request, as would be the norm in a trial court, that we receive the state's heads first, so that we get an opportunity
That is
to
how
answer.
it needs to be in this regard, because even if you wanted to argue the matter today, the state must first argue.
Yes, Your Worship, that's exactly what I was getting to.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
So the state will file to the court as well as yourself, and then you may then file yours as well. And the court will also most probably allow, in the interim, if there's any replies to the heads of arguments also by the parties, and then we can only have a date for judgment.
As Your Worship pleases. Your Worship, there may be issues that Your Worship wants to hear us on, as happened last time, Your Worship. Then we'll have the oral argument just before the judgment, but there'll be a preconceived idea based on the written heads, which I do agree
That
on.
is
Your
correct,
Worship,
Mr. Otis.
as long as we have that right still to address, Your Worship.
Yes, no.
Thank you, sir.
I'm in the hands with regards to dates. So this is not looking very happy about dates.
We don't mean to be rude, we're just trying to arrange a sequence of events. I apologize.
Your Worship, I also want to give full transcripts to my learned colleagues as well, Your Worship. The ones that we've received.
With regards to the, okay, first deal with those issues.
Your Worship, the issue that we're discussing, and I think it's fair that we share with Your Worship, is we need to wait some time for the transcripts, and we'll all have the same records, that when we do page references as previously, they'll tie in with each other, there'll be consistency. So we need to give some time for the transcripts, and I'm just trying to work out.
I just need clarity. That is what I wanted to ask with regards to the transcripts as well, because previously, I believe mostly of the police officers who testified was not part of the transcript as well. Has that been rectified as yet, or?
Not yet, Your Worship. I am liaising with the appeal clerk, Your Worship, to get that as well.
But the CDs of the recordings is available and it has been sent.
Your Worship, it has been sent, Your Worship. I just want to get that part maybe again, because there might be an issue, but I need the appeal clerk to physically come here with the sonographer, and then we sit and then we gather everything, Your Worship.
Just as long as the parties know that the record is totally incomplete with regards to the evidence of the police officers. who
Yes, Your Worship,
testified
I picked it up.
concerning-
I told my learned
Yes.
friend as well. I don't know if it exists, but we'd have to slot it in, because it doesn't appear from the record. When I did my heads of argument, I pointed it out, and I pointed out to my friend, who has tried to accommodate us to get it.
That is correct, thank you.
End of September. It's a Friday. Friday, 30th of September.
The end of the month, it doesn't have the end of the month.
So do it 29th. Can I just see that everyone's on?
We're looking at possibly 29 September, Your Worship, on a Thursday. It's not the last day of the month. That's unfortunate, the only available date for Advocate
Your
Holders.
Worship, we didn't want to choose the last day of the month. I had put that for them. My only friend reminded me that Your Worship has a problem because Your Worship looks after the other courts as well. So I had proposed Friday the 30th, but we're going to look at Thursday the 29th if that would suit Your Worship better.
In order.
Please in order with myself as well. Should
I have another matter, but I will be excused from that matter, Your Worship, because there's some uncertainty. And it's set down 28, 29, 30. I'll ensure that I'm here on the 29th. Your Worship.
Confirm the date,
Now
Your
we just
Worship,
need to arrange
29.
the dates of your heads of argument, so that we can work backwards.
I believe, let me first postpone the matter and then we will arrange if the power do go off, then we at least have
Thank
a
you,
complete
Your Worship. I
record.
appreciate that. Thank you.
You may stand. This case is then being postponed now to the 29th day of September 2022, court number 13 for judgment. The parties will arrange the dates for the court to receive their respectful heads of arguments, and the court will then deliver judgment on the 29th of September. Both of you are on warning and warned to appear at 8:30. If you fail to be at court or to remain in attendance until you are excused by the court, it will lead the court to issue warrants for your arrest. You understand?
Yes.
You may be seated. Thank you, Advocate Otis and Assad. When do I get to the heads of arguments for the state?
Your Worship, we're suggesting the 1st of August, and the reason we're suggesting the 1st of August is just to get the full transcripts, Your Worship, of everything. So the 1st of August, we can then supply to the court and...
This is only for the transcripts.
No, it's for us to reply, Your Worship. In the interim, we will try to get everything together,
Yes,
Your
but
Worship.
when do the court receive your heads of arguments?
On the 1st.
The 1st of
1st
August.
of August.
Bishop, I think then it's fair if I file on the 19th of August. And then if they want to reply, they've got some time as well, Your Worship. That's why I would, having it over a month, but they've got to wait for the transcripts. I thought 19th will be fair and give them an opportunity if they wish to put any reply in heads of argument, Your Worship.
Then the court will only give a date until the 1st of September for the parties to reply if we shall. But as advocate holders have indicated, if you do want to reply orally in court concerning such, the court will also allow that to.
As you wish, Your
That's
Honor.
fine.
As you wish.
Anything else?
Not from our side, Your Worship. Thank you, Bishop.
Ms. Hart, I also believe there were some issues. I was informed by the senior with regards to the evidence file as well as the charge sheet.
Yes, Your Worship. I
Is
just want...
there any documents that any party need with regards to drafting the heads of argument?
Yes, Your Worship. I will just need... we have half of the exhibits, Your Worship, so I would like to make a copy of... the
At this
exhibit.
stage then,
I
the
have
court,
a full set, Your Worship. I can give it
Can
to
you- if-
If you-
Then it's fine, Your
May
Worship.
they just check that everything they need is here?
Okay.
May I just have the court, sorry, Your Worship, just to confirm, and then if everything is in order, and then I will ask for the court's exhibits, Your Worship. Just want to take a picture, Your Worship, of the updated exhibit list, in order to make it easier. Just see what's in the list that is done.
What's on?
Oh, come.
Court.
So we should come to court.
Bishop, may we inquire, you've written next to O, it says court, I'm sure that's the judgment.
Yes.
And then we have the
Defense, and I believe M is for the defense, application for 174, the heads of arguments, and N would be for the state's heads of arguments, and then O would be for the court's judgment.
As your worship, we don't have that, so it hasn't been typed as yet. We're obtaining it. Thank you.
Yeah, it is also part of, I have inserted it.
Oh, is there a typewritten judgment?
Yes.
May we copy that? We don't have that.
But I believe it will also be part of the record which was made
Yes.
available recently.
We
as
don't
well,
have
so
it as yet. I think they
I
have it.
believe
We'll sort that.
the
Thank you.
defense is, because it is already, I think I've received it yesterday or during the course of this week.
Thank you, Worship.
Ms. Hart, anything else?
Nothing.
You have everything. If parties, however, request anything, the file as well as the charge sheet is in possession of the court. Is there a court book for the court to sign for today's proceedings? I'll be then in Mr. Reddy's office. Yes, thank you. You may stand. The date is still the 29th for purposes, 29th of September for purposes of judgment. You are on warning and want to appear at 8:30. If you fail to be at court, court will authorize warrants. You understand?
Yes.
Court adjourned.